The night was unusually silent. Not even the crickets dared to sing, and the only sound that reached my ears was the faint ticking of the old clock on my bedroom wall. I stirred awake at 4 a.m., my throat dry and heart pounding for no reason I could understand. Perhaps it was just age catching up with me, those restless nights that sneak up on you without warning. I pushed myself up, adjusting the blanket, when a faint light caught my eye from the window. Curiosity pulled me closer. Through the half-open curtain, I saw a shadow moving in the backyard. At first, I thought it might be a stray dog or perhaps a neighbor wandering about, but then my breath caught in my chest. The figure bent low, shovel in hand, dirt spraying to the side under the pale silver of the moonlight. My eyes narrowed, and I realized with a shock, it was my son. For a moment I stood frozen, one hand pressed against my lips. What on earth is he doing out there at this hour? His movements were hurried, almost frantic, as if time itself was chasing him. The soft thud of the shovel piercing the soil echoed faintly, each sound stabbing at my nerves. He looked around often, making sure no one was watching. I wanted to fling the window open and ask him what he was doing, but something deep inside whispered for me to stay silent. Instead, I waited, hidden in the shadows of my own room, as he finally lowered something heavy into the hole he had dug. My eyes strained in the darkness, but I couldn't quite make out what it was. He buried it quickly, covering the soil with practiced swipes, patting it down firmly before wiping his hands on his pants. Then, as if nothing had happened, he carried the shovel inside the shed, dusted himself off, and returned quietly to the house. His footsteps echoed faintly in the hallway until his door clicked shut. I sat there, trembling. My son, my own flesh and blood, why would he bury something in the dead of night? The question gnawed at me, clawing its way into my thoughts until I could no longer resist. Pulling on a shawl, I slipped out of my room. The floor creaked under my weight, and I froze at every sound, afraid he might catch me. Slowly, I made my way to the backyard. The cold morning air nipped at my skin, and the earth still smelled freshly turned. My heart raced as I knelt down on the exact spot I had seen him digging. With shaking hands, I took the gardening spade resting by the shed and began to dig. Each scoop of soil sent waves of dread through me. What if it was something terrible? What if it was something I was never meant to see? My palms grew sweaty, my breath shallow, but I kept going. Finally, the spade hit something solid. My stomach twisted. I brushed the soil away until my hands touched the edge of a wooden box. It looked old, but recently used. The wood still sturdy, not weather-worn. With effort, I dragged it out of the hole. My fingers trembled as I unlatched it and slowly lifted the lid. The sight before me made my blood run cold. Inside lay not only the jewelry I had hidden away after my husband's passing, pieces that belonged to my mother, heirlooms meant for safekeeping, but also letters I had kept locked in a drawer, letters from my husband's final days. And among them, tucked at the very bottom, was a document. My heart hammered painfully against my ribs as I unfolded it. It was a will. My late husband's will. But even at a glance, I knew something was wrong. The handwriting, though familiar at first, bore the unmistakable strokes of my son's hand. I had watched him write enough as a child to recognize it anywhere. The words screamed betrayal. The ground seemed to sway under me as I sank to my knees, clutching the paper. My son, my boy, whom I had raised with every ounce of strength in me, was burying lies in our backyard. The cool wind brushed against my tear-streaked cheeks as a single thought consumed me. Why? I barely slept after that night. The images of my son under the moonlight, hurriedly shoveling dirt over the box, kept replaying in my mind. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the forged will, the stolen jewelry, and the letters I had once held close to my heart. By dawn, I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out my insides and left only a shell behind. When I stepped into the kitchen the next morning, he was already there, sipping tea casually, as though nothing had happened. His hair was slightly damp, probably from a shower, and he greeted me with a smile that should have brought me warmth, but instead pierced me like a knife. "Good morning, Ma," he said cheerfully. "You didn't sleep well, did you? You look pale." I forced a weak smile, hiding the storm raging inside me. "I'm fine," I replied, my voice calm though my hands trembled slightly as I reached for the teapot. But inside, I was screaming. How could he sit there, so normal, when just hours ago he had betrayed me? Over the next few days, I watched him closely. He didn't notice. He thought I was the same trusting mother, blind with love. But I paid attention to every detail: the way he avoided my gaze when I mentioned his father, how he kept his phone close, never letting it out of sight, and how he slipped out late at night, whispering on calls. One evening, while passing by his room, I heard his voice through the slightly open door. I froze, pressing my ear against the frame. "Yes, once the documents are settled, the house will be mine," he whispered urgently. "She won't be able to contest it. No one will. The lawyer said it looks authentic enough. Once it's approved, we can sell it. The buyers are already lined up." I felt my knees weaken. Sell it. My home. The place where I had raised him, where every corner carried the memory of my husband, where laughter and tears had once filled the air. His wife's muffled voice answered from the other end, though I couldn't make out every word. But the tone was sharp, greedy. Together, they were planning to strip away everything I had left. I staggered back silently, tears welling in my eyes. It wasn't just about the jewelry, or even the forged will. It was about trust. Trust I had built for years. Trust I had given unconditionally. My own son, whom I had protected from the world, was plotting to erase me from my own life. That night, as I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, memories flooded me. I remembered the nights I stayed awake, rocking him to sleep when he was a baby, the mornings I skipped meals so he could have more on his plate, the winters I wore thin shawls so he could have new jackets, the sacrifices, the love, the prayers whispered for his success. All of it now felt like ashes in my hands. My chest ached with betrayal, but alongside the pain, something else was born, a quiet resolve. I would not confront him blindly. Not yet. Love had made me blind once, but betrayal had opened my eyes. The next morning, I picked up the jewelry box again, touching each piece carefully before locking it away in a different place. I took photographs of the forged will, making sure every stroke of his handwriting was clear. If he wanted to play this game, then so be it. But I would not let him win. As I folded the forged will back into the wooden box, a bitter thought whispered inside me. A son who buries his mother's love has already buried himself. And I knew then, though it broke my heart, that I would have to fight my own blood. The days that followed were some of the hardest of my life. Every smile from my son cut like a blade. Every "Ma, do you need anything?" sounded less like love and more like mockery. I had to pretend to be the same soft, clueless woman I had always been in his eyes. Inside, though, I was no longer the mother who trusted blindly. I was a mother preparing for war. The box with the forged will and my stolen jewelry never left my thoughts. I had hidden it away again, but this time on my terms, secure, photographed, and documented. The first step, I knew, was to protect myself legally. But whom could I trust? My son had already fooled me. What if others, too, were only waiting for weakness? After much thought, I reached out to an old friend of my husband's. A lawyer, a man who had once stood as best man at our wedding. We hadn't spoken in years, but when he saw me step into his office, his expression softened with recognition and respect. "Bibi, what brings you here?" he asked gently. I placed the photographs and copies of the forged will on his desk. My hands trembled, but my voice was steady. "I need to know if these will stand in a court of law." He examined them for a long time, his brows furrowed. Finally, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. "This is serious. Very serious. Whoever did this was clever, but not clever enough. The handwriting comparisons, the missing witness signatures, even the ink, it will not hold up. With your evidence, we can dismantle this entire scheme." His words were a balm to my battered soul, yet they also burned. "The one who did this is my son." For a moment, the room was silent. He searched my face, as though waiting for me to say I was mistaken. But when he realized the truth, his expression hardened. "Then you must be even more careful. Betrayal from outside wounds the skin. Betrayal from within, it destroys the heart. Don't act in haste. Let him think he is winning. The more he reveals, the stronger your case becomes." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "So I should wait?" "Yes. Watch him. Gather proof. And when the time is right, we will strike." That night, as I walked home, the streetlights cast long shadows on the road, and I felt as though I was walking between two worlds. The world of the mother I used to be, and the world of the woman I was becoming. At home, I slipped back into my role. I cooked his favorite meals, listened to his casual talk, even laughed at his small jokes. But behind every smile, I was listening for clues. And they came. Whispers of meetings with buyers, Hints of legal steps being taken, the eagerness of a man already counting money that wasn't his. His wife became bolder, too. She no longer hid her disdain for me. One evening, while my son was out, she smirked at me across the dinner table. "You know," she said casually, twirling her fork, "this house is far too big for you alone. Don't you think it would be better in younger hands?" I looked at her calmly, though her words struck deep. "Some things," I replied softly, "do not belong to those who are young, but to those who understand their worth." Her smirk faltered, but only for a moment. I had spoken like a woman who knew, yet she still believed I was blind. That was my strength now. Let them underestimate me. Quietly, I began building alliances. I reconnected with relatives I had drifted from, strengthened ties with neighbors who respected me, and even confided in a few trusted friends. I didn't reveal everything, only enough to ensure that when the storm broke, I wouldn't be standing alone. In the stillness of my room each night, I whispered to my late husband's photograph. "They think I am weak. They think I will step aside. But I promise you, my love, I will protect what we built, even if it means standing against our own blood." And in the silence, it felt as though his eyes urged me on, steady and unwavering. The plan was taking shape, and when the time came, I would bury not just his forged will, but his greed, forever. The day of reckoning arrived sooner than I expected. My son walked around the house with a spring in his step, his chest puffed out with pride, as though victory was already his. I heard him on the phone more than once, bragging to his wife, "Don't worry, Ma won't stand a chance. By next week, the papers will be ours." He thought he had buried me under his lies. But what he didn't know was that I had already built a wall of truth around myself. The court hearing was set for a bright Tuesday morning. As I dressed in a simple white shower camise, I felt strangely calm. For weeks, my heart had been heavy with betrayal, but that day, it beat with purpose. I carried with me not just photographs and documents, but also the weight of every sacrifice I had made for him, every prayer, every sleepless night. When I entered the courtroom, he was already there, sitting confidently beside his lawyer, his wife smirking proudly behind him. For a brief moment, my heart ached at the sight of him. My little boy, who once held my hand crossing the road, now sitting as my enemy. But then I remembered the whispers I had overheard, the greed in his voice, the coldness in his wife's eyes. My resolve hardened. The proceedings began. His lawyer spoke with certainty, presenting the forged will as though it were gospel. My son kept glancing at me, expecting to see fear on my face. Instead, I sat straight, backed, hands folded in my lap waiting. When it was my turn, I rose slowly. My voice trembled at first, not from weakness, but from the weight of what I was about to do. "Your Honor," I said, "the document my son has presented is not my late husband's will. It is a forgery." Gasps rippled through the room. My son's smile faltered, but he quickly recovered, shaking his head as though I were simply delusional. I continued, laying out the evidence one by one, the photographs of the box I had dug up, the handwriting comparisons that the lawyer had verified, the missing witness signatures, and finally, the recording of his late night call. The courtroom fell silent as his own voice echoed through the speakers. "Once the documents are settled, the house will be mine. She won't be able to contest it. No one will. The buyers are already lined up." His face drained of color. His wife shifted uncomfortably, her smugness vanishing in an instant. The judge's expression grew stern. "Do you deny this is your voice?" he asked my son. He stammered, sweat beading on his forehead. I didn't mean. But the truth was undeniable. The forged will, the theft, the deceit, all laid bare under the eyes of the law. The judge dismissed his claim immediately, ruling in my favor. Not only was the property secured under my rightful name, but my son now faced legal consequences for attempted fraud. His lawyer stepped back, unwilling to defend what had become indefensible. As the gavel struck, I felt tears blur my vision, not of sorrow, but of relief. I had walked into that courtroom carrying betrayal on my shoulders, and I walked out carrying justice in my hands. Outside, as the crowd dispersed, I paused for a moment, breathing in the crisp air. My son avoided my gaze, his face a mask of shame and defeat. For a fleeting second, I wanted to reach out, to remind him that he was my child, my blood. But then I remembered the hole in the backyard, the box of lies, and the way he had plotted to erase me. Love had once blinded me. Betrayal had forced me to see. I walked past him without a word, my head held high. The world may never understand the pain of a mother betrayed by her own child, but I knew one thing for certain: he had buried my trust, and in return, I had buried his greed, forever. And as I stepped into the sunlight, I whispered to myself, justice is not just about punishment. Sometimes, it's about teaching those who betray us that love is not weakness, it is strength.